Ooh. Mm. Hi, Father Roberto. Uh-oh. Hi, is everybody here? Can you see me? I hope you can see me. Whoa, this thing's falling apart here. Okay, there we go. Okay, how is everybody doing? Hello. If you come in, could you sign in here so I can know who's here? Can I have a drink? Because I'm really tired today, and I just spoke for an hour, so my throat is going. Mm, yum yum. Thank you for letting me drink. Mm, my chops are not working well today. So, how are you doing today? I don't get too much response from the this group here. This is my Facebook group, and this is my YouTube group. A lot of stuff from you guys. So if you're here, you can put your name right here and just say hi, and then I'll know who you are. So let's just wait a little while because I couldn't get on soon enough, and people get scared. The next thing you know, they're gone. Oh, let me turn this off. There we go. Hmm. Oh, yes. Ah, hmm. Hmm. Okay. Let me see where we are here. Hi. Oops, sorry. Let me see. I want to make sure I'm on the right page. Okay, here we are. Hmm. Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi, Daniel. How are you? Daniel, the artist, is here. Hi, everybody. If you like, you can put your name right here on the live chat section. So, how is everybody doing today? Good. I'm doing okay. I have a little bit of a headache, but I'm okay, and I'm a little dry, having spoken for an hour in Espanol. And so, how are you doing? Good. I hope. I hope you're all doing good. Mhm. Let me get some stuff here ready. Okay. Hmm. We can ditch that. Okay, we're just waiting for some folk. Okay. No, I don't need this. And I don't need this. Hmm. 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 Okay, let's get on with it. Mhm. These are all bunch moldies here. This sounds like me. I went to the doctors. I'm horrible in math. So Really, I flunked algebra. I didn't understand what the letters meant. They represented numbers, but I didn't know that. Hi, Denise. Hi, Maite. I'm really bad. In fact, when I went to college, they said, Don't take math." I didn't take math in college. You won't believe that, do you? But math and myself, I never could get the concepts. Anybody there teach math? Because my math is horrible. Well, one day when they wheeled me into emergency, the nurse goes, "On a scale of 0 to 10, 0 representing no pain and 10 representing excruciating pain, what would you say is your pain level now?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm not good with math." And she just looked at me like, okay. Yeah, so today we're going to take some scripture from Raymond E. Brown. I told you he's the best theologian. He passed away. And unfortunately, I had a lecture with him twice, and he was excellent. And then we're going to talk about uh, the writings of our Pope, and we're going to discuss some of his work on the family, which is a beautiful treatise. It's a beautiful work of of the Pope for us, people of this century or any century really. His writings are just wonderful. They're easier to read than the other popes that have written are, and they're easier to read. They are easier to read his works. And so we'll read about that, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion about life, and then we'll call it a day. So, so what do you? Oh, and I told you. Remember, I told you. Hi, Estelita, Francisco, and Denise, and Maite and Daniel. Remember, I told you that I wanted you to come today with a question, but I bet you forgot. So right now, I'll be mulling into your minds while we're talking here and figure out a question that nobody's ever answered for you, that has been bothering you, that maybe they answered for you, but it wasn't the answer you really wanted or you were expecting, or left you more confused than when you had asked the question first. So, does anybody have any questions, Estelita Villegas and Francisco Lopez and Denise and Maite? Does anybody have any questions today about your faith, about anything that you've heard about the church in recent years, um, about today? You know, how the president, is it moral for the president to, even though he might know that something we don't know, or he doesn't know what we know, is it okay to let people out right now into the wild blue yonder? Um, is it moral, for him to do that? Anything like that. What about our faith? Yakita, how are you? Yakita could tell you more about everything that I'm talking to you about because she's well read. And how is your husband doing, Yakita? How is he doing? And how many kitties do you have now? Do you have children? I know you have another child, but since then, I don't know. She's from Watsonville, and I worked there for 9 years with 600 kids a year. They were migrant children, and they were very, very poor. I mean, very poor. In a place where it's one of the richest valleys of food production in the world. Most of the strawberries that you get are from there. Um, you just have to read Watsonville. It's amazing how that industry has developed from the first year I got there to the ninth year. They can actually tell you, now this is not a lie, they can actually tell you when you buy your product, and it's got those little bars that tell you about everything about it, where they can tell you exactly where they got it from. And that huge, vast, or those vast fields of strawberries stretching for miles and miles, they can tell you it's from this batch right here, this ground here. It's amazing. It's amazing the technology we have. Uh, but from one of the richest valleys of the poorest people. Now, thank God, they've built places for them, for our people, and nice places. Instead of before, there were Quonset huts. Remember the old long buildings where all the soldiers used to sleep in World War II, where they used to stay? Well, all they did was just partition it with very thin plywood, and each family lived in one of those little hovels. It was very rough. It was very rough and very immoral, really. And we should have spoken more. But somebody did speak for us, Cesar Chavez. They really hated him there. I mean, because he really chatted. Well, they were pooping all over the fields, and they didn't have any portable toilets. They didn't have rest periods, some of them, and they paid them $1 for each little box of berries, strawberries, or whatever that they picked. It was slavery. Although there were some people that were so good, some people who were owners better than people of their same race that owned places better, and they even had time for mass for them, special masses for them. They used to call me over and do a special mass for them, and they treated their workers. They gave them better benefits than later on the union. It's always great to have a union, though. Unions are good, okay, in a way. They can come out with their own little devices to kind of do this or that, but usually they represent those people that work for them. Otherwise, whew. So I shouldn't be talking politics. But anyway, so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the writings of Raymond E. Brown, one of the best theologians we've had in centuries, really. What he writes is, but then we have to realize that our knowledge grows. And one day he will be challenged by the new theologians with all the new knowledge that we're gaining. Like in archaeology, they're discovering places that we learn many things from it, from the findings, their diggings, their you know all the stuff that they're doing. Sometimes changes our views of the Bible, and even in the old ancient um, beliefs beliefs of antiquity are changing because we're finding new things that match or don't match to what the Bible says. But that's all I'm going to say because I don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, yeah, it's been one of those days. Today's been one of those days. One of the sisters here who teaches, well, the only sister we have that teaches catechism, she asked me to deliver some packets because some of our young people received packets about 2 months ago, and they're studying for their confirmation at home. But 5 people just couldn't make it because they worked, or because then they put this thing where you can't go out, and so she said, "Could you just, hand them out?" And I said, "Sure." Says they're around your neighborhood anyway. She lives across town in St. Peter and Paul's convent there. So I said, "Sure, I'll go." So I got all the addresses of these 4 people. Oh my gosh, one of them lived on top of a mountain that I've always wanted to climb. Well, I got to drive up there, so that was way up there. And then the other the other domicile, the other address was way across town. And then so the whole morning I spent driving around. But you know what I learned is that people are here in San Francisco. They're following what Peter said. I'm sorry, not Peter, Paul. St. Paul said in his letter to the Romans, obey the authorities, your legitimate authorities, obey them. All power comes from God. I keep on saying that. Even Hitler's power came from God. Otherwise, he couldn't rule. But he misused his power because we have free will. I was talking to the first group today in Spanish. I go from 2 to 3 in Espanol, and I was talking to them about animals. When we'll see right now in the writings of Raymond Brown on the Bible. But animals are nice, okay, and we sometimes love them to death, and we think they love us back, but it's not a human love. They have to love us back because we feed them, okay, and we love them, and we play with them and all that. Yeah, right. But it's not like human beings. There's no reciprocity. There's no back and forth. Like I give you a birthday present, and then you might give me a birthday present, but you don't have to. Okay, there's that free choice. And that makes that type of love better because the dog has to love you. Okay, because that's the way he's made. He can't change. He can't change. There'll be a dog, will be a dog, will be a dog. But a human being can change. One day they love you, and the next day you find out why they love you because they want to get something from you. You're valuable to them only because you are what they want. And then you start crying because you thought that person really loved you. But when that person loves you because that person decides freely to love you, oh my God, it's heaven. That's why when a married person, okay, loves his wife and the wife loves the husband, it's every day is I love you and I'm staying with you because I want to. Not because you feed me, not because you pet me, not because I'm cute like a little panda bear. No, like little Ted. Don't watch that movie, it's horrible. And then, I'm going to go. My mind is like James Joyce. It's, fluidity, you know. And what's his name? Mark Wahlberg. Now, why was he in the movie like that? People are saying because he's a Catholic and he's a devout Catholic. I'm telling you, I know because I saw him at Mass. And I was giving a talk on the missions and I saw him at Mass. And he goes to Mass every day, okay, because of a Franciscan priest who really taught him what Christianity is. And yet he's in that movie, which is kind of raunchy, really, kind of yucky, uh, kind of nasty, really. But how do you know, Father? Because I saw a little bit of it. I've never seen it all the way through it. But I just want to see what's going on with our friend who really professes Jesus Christ. He really does. He's a very nice man. And so, why is he in that film? Is that why? So those are things we're judging as human beings, and we really shouldn't. That's his business. He has to feed his family. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. So where were we? Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, so love is such a beautiful thing, but it's more beautiful when it comes from somebody that doesn't have to love you and does freely. I mean, he could love all sorts of people, but he's picked you to be a friend, to be a husband, to be a wife, to be an associate, to be whatever. Okay, it's a beautiful thing. It really is. Freedom. God gives us free will to love, to be good. Unfortunately, when we have a free will, we can do evil. See, we think free will is like the best thing in the whole world, and it is here. But when you get to heaven, what do you need it for? Like, for instance, remember the theological virtues that we learned in grammar school? We didn't even know what it meant, but we knew we heard faith, hope, and charity, and we treasure them. Faith, I mean, geez, if you don't have faith, that's tough. You can lose your faith too. But if you don't have faith, human faith, first of all, you trust people, take them at their word. If they're lying, if they're going to cheat you, well, that's them. But you take people at their word that they're telling you the truth. You have to be wise too. You can't be, somebody tells you something, then betrays you, and then somebody and the same guy does it again, or the same woman, and then they betray you. Well, you're not going to stick around for that. That's not what it meant. You have to be prudent too. There's all these virtues, okay? But then we have faith, hope, and charity. Those are the top. Those are the theological virtues. But you know what? When we get to heaven, we're not going to need faith anymore because we're already going to see God. What do you need faith for? You see Him, okay? You relate to Him in a very direct way. No more, Our Father, I don't know where you are, but if you're in heaven, okay, no. Now you see Him. You don't need hope anymore. You're there. What are you hoping for? I hope that I really get to heaven. Okay, no more. But what lasts? Love. Love will always last forever and ever and ever because God is love, as St. John says in his gospel. So, what I'm going to do, hi Mike, how you doing? Hi Tony, hi Mike, hi Tony. I told you, please. Claude, again, you're watching this. He watched in Spanish and he knows Italian and all these languages. How are you? He's a bishop. I've been always jealous of him because he's a bishop. What am I? What am I? A pawn? What am I? A tower? What am I? I am a pawn. I'm just a priest. Just that. We're all priests. Remember that. We're all priests. And he's a bishop, so he can checkmate me in anytime. Okay, enough of that silliness. Um, what are we talking about now? Oh, yes, priesthood. You are a great priest, Linda. That will not help you get points. Okay, can you please do me a big favor? Please, can you? I've been telling you this forever, but nobody has. Like they write, "Oh, you're doing a good job. Are you a good priest?" But I don't want that. I don't want adulation. Well, yes, I do. Send more. But what I want is I want questions, so that I can answer them and I feel better. Hi, Rick. That's my nephew, and I'm sure Perla's watching. And she's got a beautiful garden. And there's David Mungia. What a nice name. So ask me questions because then I can answer them and I feel better because I'm just here, blah, 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 blah. And maybe you have something that you would like to learn and you ask a question, everybody's happy because that's what you really want to talk about, not what I'm telling you. Okay. Now we're going to take what I was talking about and love. Okay. I think you will like this. And tomorrow we'll take about your children. Okay. A nice chapter on your children. Okay. Let me see now. Where are we? Okay. So here we are. We're gonna talk about the 100. No, not the 100. Right now we're in the Pope's writing, Amoris Laetitia, which means the joy of love. What's so joyful about love when people are hating each other and they don't get along and the kids are hating you and all that stuff? Well, that's part of life. But then they love you too. Okay, there's ups and downs, valleys and mountains. Okay, so let's read from the Pope. Okay, on the family again, and this is chapter 1, and it's called "In the Light of the Word." Okay, beautiful writings. It's a little heavy, but not as heavy as what we're going to read next. Okay, in speaking of marriage, Jesus. Okay, we're talking about Jesus. We always think, well, Jesus. Did you ever read the Bible? And well, it wasn't together yet. The Jewish Bible was put together in 90 AD. Very famous priests and rabbis and things like that. Well, when the temple was gone, the priesthood of the Jews ended until they rebuilt the temple, and they all know that. Then they'll have the priesthood again, their priesthood. So in Jamnia, Jamnia, a little town up above Jerusalem, they all got together and said, these are the books that we consider books of all the books we collect. And then they called it a Biblia, which means a collection of books. Biblios in Greek means book. And Biblia with the A is the plural. So it just means a collection of books. Remember, they were all scattered around. There were, what do you call it? Scrolls written on papyrus type paper, and that was a redundancy, and also sheepskin, straight sheepskin, right on it, or clay tablets or things like that. There was a collection of all these things, and then they were here and there, and then they put them together, and they say, this is what this. These are sacred writings. These are the word of God, and that's the Jewish faith. Okay, it's not us yet until Jesus Christ comes down. And yet all of the Christians would go to the temple on the Sabbath because they were Jews, they were good Jews. And then they come back and then they celebrate this, and then they began thinking, well, what did Jesus want us to do? And now with all these people coming in that are not Jews, these Gentiles, which they used to call dogs, but see, for them it wasn't anything bad. It wasn't like the N word that we use sometimes for people of a different race. which is horrible. We should never, ever mention that word ever again. It should be wiped out. But they used to call him, remember Jesus in the Bible? He uses the word too, indirectly, but he does. There was a woman, Syrophoenician woman, she wasn't even Jewish, and cure my daughter. And he goes, should I feed you with the food that we have? And she says, the food that we throw like to the dogs. And she goes, well, even the food that falls off the master's table, the dogs eat. And he goes, you got me. Because, they like to cap on each other. That was a big thing in those days. You do this. And you remember how we say that? Your mother wears combat boots. And well, your mother does this. And your mother, and whoever capped the best, that means whoever said the worst thing about the other person won out. Well, they loved to cap in those days too. And when she went like, they goes, well, this dog, and he goes, well, even the scraps fall and the dogs eat it. So, and then he goes, you got me. So, okay. And he was going to do it anyway. Of course, Jesus was very compassionate, but he always said, we come to the Jews first. He would always tell his disciples. It wasn't until Paul came and the whole thing changed. Paul of Tarsus, whose name was Saul, before Jesus Christ came to him in a very special way. And he was the one that was trying to destroy Christians. And he became one himself, miraculously, through some action of Jesus. But he did. Okay, so let's go back to this again. In speaking of marriage, Jesus refers us to yet another page of Genesis, which in its second chapter paints a splendid and detailed portrait of the couple. He's talking about the couple, okay? He's talking about people getting together, okay? And he says, first, we see the man who anxiously seeks a helper fit for him, capable of alleviating the solitude which he feels amid the animals in the world around him. Okay, for a while he was having fun with animals and little pandas and all that stuff. Okay, they're cute. Uh, but after a while, after the lions and tigers and bears, you get tired of all that stuff. And then you can't talk to them and they can't respond to you. And you can't communicate with them like you would another one of me. Only Adam was there. And then Eve comes into the picture. Well, you heard that story about Adam and Eve. And Adam used to go to work. And I think I told you this one before. Yeah, but it's good saying it again. It's just for fun, so we feel better in these sad times. So then Adam was going to work every day, and coming back at the same time. And then Eve was all happy and everything. And one time he was late, but he didn't say anything. And then another time he was late, very late, and he didn't say anything. And then the third time he comes in really, really, and she goes, are you going around with another woman? He starts laughing. And he goes, what's the matter with you? I said, you're the only woman on this planet. She goes, uh-huh. So then they went to sleep. And about midnight, he feels this thing, like a pressure on the side of his body. And ouch. And he wakes up and it's Eve. And he goes, what are you doing? And she says, I'm counting your ribs. Okay. That's a funny story. Uh, well, because God, I don't want to explain it. Yeah, well, I'll explain because God took a rib and made a woman out of him. But remember, that's not how God works that way. Because, there's two stories of creation, but we won't go into that right now because you get all scandalized. There's two stories of creation, not just one. Okay. And so they go, this is the way it happened. Well, there's two stories of creation. Which one? Okay, both of them. Okay. So anyway, yeah, that happened to a little boy learned in what do you call it? Little boy, so they don't know the difference between the reality of it all and what's symbolic. So he comes from catechism, and they taught him well, and he knew. And so he goes to his mom and says, "Oh, mom, you know what? I think I'm going to have a baby." And she goes, "What? Where did you get that idea? This little kid?" And he goes, well, and the teacher told us in the Bible that God made, so he's touching his ribs, that God made Eve from one of the ribs of of Adam. So he really thought that that's the way people are born, that they take a rib out, and poor little kid. And they had to explain to him, yo, and another thing, please. And this is, I'm going to say it in cryptic language because I know there's kids watching, but don't explain to kids things that are beyond their age level. Otherwise, hmm, I remember one. This is sad because one of these little kids came home one day, and he was all excited, and he goes, "Mom, where do I come from?" And she starts explaining to him, and he's only in the first grade, and she starts explaining everything to her, if you know what I mean, everything. And so the little kid's eyes are going like this, like this, like this, like this, and she's explaining how mom and daddy love each other and how this thing happens and that happens and this happens. And then she goes, see, that's the way babies are made. Why did you ask? And he goes, well, because Billy said he came from Chicago. I just want to know where I come from. See, I mean, you have to be careful of the way you deal with children. In this age, day and age, we have things on the internet, and the kids can find out anything about everything. And unfortunately, they can find out things that they shouldn't be finding out because it ruins them. It really does. It ruins their lives if they get something that's too soon. You have to be careful, read some books about child development or something, and or just ask questions or go to a class on how to deal with kids and stuff. Okay, that came out all of that came out just from reading this little passage here. Okay, let's try it again. And speaking of marriage, Jesus refers us to another part of Genesis, and that part is about finding a helper fit for him. Okay, just to go down a bit, capable of alleviating the solitude which he feels amid the animals in the world around him. Like I said, okay, animals are fun, but they don't love you like a human being does. One day your dog comes, you're not feeding me the right food, so I'm leaving. Okay, I don't love you anymore. No, you mistreat him and he runs away. Mistreat him, but okay. The original Hebrew. Now, why does he bring that up? We don't know the original Hebrew. Well, I had to study Hebrew, and it really colors you. Now, you're not going to do this, okay? And who cares? But it really colors your view of the Bible and how it was written and all that. It really does. Hebrew for me was an eye opener, really, because when you read the translations, it's somebody, one person translating the way he feels this translation should go, and there are many. They try to catch the meaning of it, not just word by word, not literal meaning, but the meaning of the whole sentence or what it means to them and what it means to us now. But when you read the original, like for instance, what is it? Adam Bereshit Adamach, that Adam was made from clay, from dust. Okay, from dust you are, and dust shall return. It's more than that. It's moldable clay. So you see God coming down. He doesn't have any arms or hands or anything like that because he's a spirit. But here we have to anthropomorphize him. Anthropomorphize him, is it? Yeah. Um, we have to make what's not visible, kind of visible to our mind. So we make an anthropo, jeez, I forget how to say it now. Well, it's anthropomorphic. Okay. That means that you're morphic change. And then anthropos means man in Greek. I mean, in Hebrew. No, in Greek, I'm sorry. Anthropos in Greek. And so my mind is not working today. And so when you do that, it's like a mouse. Okay. They can't talk and they don't express their feelings. But when you watch Mickey Mouse, uh, he's anthropo, anthropo, morpho, let me get a dictionary. Okay, he's being made into a man, okay, into a human. He's given human qualities. You see that all in the Walt Disney films. Alice in Wonderland's going to open a doorknob and then it speaks to her. They don't do that. Let me tell you. If they did, I'd get a heart attack. So, yeah. So, where were we now? Okay, so when you read it in Hebrew, it really gets down to the nitty gritty. And Adam doesn't mean a name. It's not Adam really. It means man in general. There's another word for man in Hebrew that means this man, that man. And Evach doesn't mean Eve. It's not a name. It becomes a name, yes, but it means mother of creation, mother of what's going on. And so the reason why they chose that word and not the regular man, that man, was because the next word is adamach, which means moldable clay. Okay, and then it's poetic. It's nice and beautiful. Well, anyway, let's not get into that. But reading something in the original is so different. But since we all can't do that, because I didn't take enough Hebrew or Greek or Latin, but I did take some of those languages, who cares? It's what you read in your translation. And if they want to explain it more to you, they have little footnotes on your Bibles and all that. So that's all you need. Okay. So, where were we? Oh, here we are. So the man's Adam is feeling lonely. Well, I would too if I didn't find somebody that I could talk to. So he says the original Hebrew suggests a direct encounter face to face, eye to eye, in a kind of silent dialogue. For where love is concerned, silence is always more eloquent than words. You're right. You can tell somebody, I love you. But when you're there sitting next to them, snuggling next to each other, and it's so beautiful and everything's quiet and you're sitting there watching Saturday Night Live and you're all happy. Okay, no, not really, not Saturday Night Live. Yeah, the quiet moments. Oops. Let me see. Oh no, somebody have to get rid of that. Excuse me. Let me see. Oh boy. Now let me see. There we go. Okay, so that's what he's saying. And then he says, uh, it is an encounter with a face, a thou, who reflects like you, but it's the old English thou, who reflects God's own love and is man's best possession. This is a quote. He wants somebody, and this is the quote from Sirach. He says, that person is man's best possession, a helper fit for him, and a pillar of support. That's from Sirach, verse 24 of chapter 36. Or again, as the woman of the Song of Solomon will sing in a magnificent profession of love and mutual self bestowal. This is the quote, my beloved is mine, and I am his. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. Beautiful. Some of you I think maybe the Bible is a little boring. Read the Canticle of Canticles. There's the lovers represented by two little gazelle, and they're running around, hopping around, all happy with each other. And then he comes in, and then she comes in and bites the little neck and leaves the little neck, that sort of stuff. It's a lovey-dovey book. It's a beautiful book. It was called the Canticle of Canticles, and when I took the Bible studies, now they call it the Song of Solomon. Okay. Now he goes on. This encounter, which relieves man's solitude, gives rise to new birth and to the family. Significantly, Adam, who is also the man of every time and place, together with his wife, starts a new family. Jesus speaks of this by quoting the passage from Genesis: the man shall be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one. The very word to be joined or to cleave, like a cat cleaves onto you with his nails and with his claws. In the original Hebrew, bespeaks a profound harmony, a closeness, both physical and interior, to such an extent that the word is used to describe our union with God. Marriage union, God and us union. Wow. Because, Jesus wanted to find a way, and God wanted to find a way on how to describe his relationship with us. And he was thinking, well, the most beautiful relationship on earth is marriage. So I'm going to say, I love you like a husband loves a wife, or a wife loves a husband, because God has no sexuality. He's not male or female. He's a spirit. Okay. Well, in Jesus Christ, he's a man. Okay. The Son became man, a human, in other words, a person. To cleave in the original bespeaks a profound harmony, a closeness both physical and interior, to such an extent that God says, my soul clings to you. That's Psalm 63, verse 8. The marital union is thus evoked, it's called out, not only in its sexual and corporal dimension, but also in its voluntary self giving and love. Voluntary, voluntary. I don't have to love you, but in fact, I do with all my heart. And when somebody says that to you, it's like heaven. And then later on, you find out that that person is fooling around with somebody else. That's the end of heaven. Then it becomes hell. That's why fidelity, and also in friendships, being friends that are betraying each other when it's convenient. That's why friendship, real friendship, it's you can't buy it with anything on this planet or any planet. So he says, but also in its voluntary giving and love. The result of this union is that the two become one flesh, both physically and in the union of their hearts and lives, and eventually in a child who will share not only genetically, but also spiritually in the flesh of both parents. Beautiful. Thank you, Pope Francis. Yeah, it's beautiful. That's why when I have a funeral of someone who of a couple, and one of them passes away, and I do their funeral, I always focus in on the partner, whether it's a man or a woman, or a man and a woman, if you know what I mean. I just focus in mainly on the person who loved them most, whether it's a wife, a partner, or anything like that. Because when you marry, and that's you're marrying each other, not the priest. The priest doesn't marry you. God doesn't have anything to do with it in a way. He blesses you, but it's you and your partner. It's not a piece of paper like, oh, it's a piece of paper, it's a ceremony. It's not even a ceremony. You know that people are married in the church, or they've been married in the early church. All they had to say was, I love you. We're going to have children. We're going to be together for the rest of our lives. And what was the last one? We're not going to mess around with anybody else sexually. It's you and me forever. Okay? Once you say that, you're married. That's why people that are living 20 years, 40 years, or 10 years, and they come to a priest, will you marry us? I haven't married anybody. You marry each other. And did you promise that you were going to be together? That you're going to have kids? Yeah, you have kids, okay? And that you haven't messed around with people. And if you have, you have forgiven each other, and it's going to be till you die. Did you? Yeah, we promised that when we met each other. Well, then guess what? You're married. We're just going to come validate your marriage. We're just going to give you the blessing of the church in a certain way, so that because in the old days there was no priest there. Okay, but then what happened is that people would be cheating on each other, saying, oh, that king over there, this is his son, and it really wasn't. They didn't know who was marrying who, so finally they made a canon law, and they said from now on a priest has to be present. Okay, so that he can note it down. But the marriage is between the couple. They are the ministers of their marriage. That's in canon law. Okay, not the priest, not God. He blesses them, but the couple. So those of you that are not married in the church, get married by the church. No, you're already married in a way of speaking, but you need the blessing that lasts forever. See, blessings are one, I bless you and that's it. Parents do that when you go on a trip or something. Or you bless your kids at night or something. Because you're a priest. Did you know that? That's why you can do that. And but the blessing that's in the sacrament, totally different in a way of speaking. It's still a blessing, but it begins when you get that blessing, and it never stops. Every minute, every second, every day, every decade, every year, it just keeps on going. because God knows you need a lot of help living with one woman and one man for the rest of your life. So he has a special blessing. It's called a nuptial blessing. They even take a prayer out of the mass, ooh, and then they substitute it with that blessing. That deliver us, O Lord. And then the special blessing. Isn't that marvelous? So, when are you going to send me a question? You haven't sent me a question yet. I am very sad, Elena and Karina and Wilma and Yolanda and Vincent. And hi, Vince, how are you doing? Vince is not doing well because of this virus thing. We're praying for you. And Kelly, we're praying for you too. Kelly is my niece. And she went into the store one day and she forgot something when she went out to her car. She walked in and they were mopping the floor. They had no sign up. They didn't, no, don't walk here. No. And she went and she slipped and her back is totally, really, she's in a lot of pain. And that was years ago. So we're praying for you, my niece, my grandniece. And there's Peter Olgain. Very good. Uh-huh. Say hi to Jane for me. And there's Caesar and David and Rick and all these people here. I can't believe Roseanne Reese. Is that? I don't know if that's sister, but she doesn't want me to know, so that's all right. And you haven't asked me any questions yet. Anthropomorphic. Thank you, Elena Ayala. My mind isn't working well today. Yes, that means anthropos means man and morph means to change into, yeah. There's another word for that too, but I can't remember. Okay, so anyway, it's almost time for me to go. So, I was going to read something from the Bible, which is very important because this man, Raymond E. Brown, one of the best theologians, if not the best in far as Johannine studies, the study of John's gospel. But he's just wonderful and he's very open. And I'm going to read this to you because I like this book. It's 101 questions and answers on the Bible. And this is for us, for everybody, really, but mainly for you, lay people. Okay. He tries to make it palatable, so it's not boring. Okay. So this is question 16 of his book. Somebody asked him, have you ever found a conflict about what the Catholic Church teaches based on the scriptures and your interpretation of biblical texts? Have you ever something that when the church hears about it, they go, heretic, you're wrong? Okay, have you ever done that? And this is what Raymond D. Brown says. Passed away, probably one day will become a saint. I mean, declared a saint. He is a saint. We're all saints. If you're not in mortal sin, that means a horrible sin. You killed somebody, you stole tons of money, you destroyed somebody's name. It has to be pretty serious to be a mortal sin. You don't just commit mortal sins. You have to know it's a sin. It has to be a sin, and you have to want to do it. I want to do it. That's your will. Okay. Then, and it has to be serious. Then it's a sin. Those two things have to be there. Otherwise, okay. So he says, no. And I can say no, not simply because, as I have reported above, the Catholic Church has not concerned itself in its doctrinal statements with the literal sense of Scripture in the way that I explained literal. That means you take it word for word, and that's the way it is, and there's no interpretation. Okay? Those are fundamentalists, people who believe that way. And you can't, because even things, I'll make it easy for you. Oh no, I'm going to be like this the rest of my life. Oops, I have to make it a little more dramatic. See, I don't have any hands because Jesus said, chop your hand off if you sin with your hand, or I'd be like blind. Pluck your eye out if you see anything bad. Well, I've seen some bad things in my life, but I'm not going to pluck my eye out. What does it mean? It means Jesus means. And remember, the Jews loved hyperbole, which is gross exaggeration. They loved it. They use it a lot. See, we don't just say, oh, the Jews loved it. The biblical scholars study not only the Bible, they study zillions of writings of that era, of Jesus' era. Let's pretend that this room here, my office, was filled with tiny little books about this small, okay? This is how much biblical literature we have. And the rest of all the books that fill this room are the writings of that era. So there's a lot of comparison going on. Biblical scholars just don't look at one and say this is what it means here. They have to look at everything else. What did the word mean in all these literary writings from? That's a redundancy. What does it mean about? What did it mean in this book? What did it mean in that book written by this guy Cicero? What did it mean by this Plautus and all these things? What did it mean? What did it mean? What did it mean? And so they read all the literature. And now they don't all do one job. There's thousands of theologians that are working. There was this one priest. Oh my God. I'll never forget the story. There was one priest who had studied one part of the Bible and only one section of the Bible and only a few chapters of the Bible. And he had his whole room. All the shelves were filled with all the work he had done all his life. It burnt down. Jeez. Oh my God. So they asked, what are you going to do? I'll begin again. I mean, but the scholarship and these people, and it's not just a Catholic, it's all those people that are writing books for their universities who teach Latin and Greek, and they're not dealing with religion. They're dealing with just literature at that time. And then they write this and they write that, explains it, and then these biblical scholars read that. And they go, well, I guess that means this in the Bible. And it's a very complex thing. So back to this. So then he says, often people consider everything they were taught in religion classes in grammar school to be church doctrine. Yet at times, that was an amalgamation of doctrine, opinion, and pious beliefs. Some of those stories, they never happened. Okay. Some stories that we were told, as kids and all that, they never happened. It was just, but that's not bad. Remember, who was the one that chopped down the cherry tree? Do you remember which president did that? Do you remember? Washington. Okay. Washington. Did he ever chop down a cherry tree with his little hatchet and then hide it behind his back? And when his father came and said, who knocked down my favorite cherry tree? He says, I cannot tell a lie. Hatchet, I did it. Oh, what a moral little boy. I would have whacked him with a little hatchet. No, I wouldn't have. But that never happened. You know how it happened? Later, a century later, some preacher was trying to write a book and get it sold and make it a bestseller. And he says, you know what? I'll write a story about this little kid. Whom shall I choose that people would like to read about? Oh, our first president. That's the way that story came out to be. And we all believed it for years and years and years. Never happened. Okay, that's what he's saying here. Some of the stuff we learned as kids, okay, get rid of it. Now you're adults. And you're living at this time. It may change again later on, but we live where we live. So then he says, the field of church doctrine is really rather narrow. I am sure, exemplify that in my responses to other questions that I will be asked. See? It's not this big thing when the church takes over everything. No. Okay, first one must be careful. Second, even where truly there's doctrine involved, okay, like the Virgin Mary really, really assumed into heaven. The Virgin Mary was born without those things, okay? With the help of scholarship, has the church isolated what is doctrine from what has been simply a convenient way of expressing it? So, it's convenient right now. Let's just talk about this assumption thing like this. Well, later on, they go, no, no, no. Too easy. For instance, let me drink some. My mouth is like very, very dry. This is zero, nothing else. Okay. So he says, for instance, it is the church doctrine that God created the world. We know that. God created everything from nothing. For many centuries, those who proclaimed that may well have understood it to be part of the doctrine that God created the world exactly as described in the opening chapters of Genesis. So some people said, yeah, God created everything, and he did it exactly the same as it's described in the first chapter. Under the impact of modern scholarship about Genesis, the Catholic Church is now very clear that the doctrine of God's creating does not include the manner in which he created it. Okay, yeah, God created everything, but how he did it, he could explain the whole formula of creation from nothing, and then we don't know what nothing is. Close your eyes, I see nothing. You see black with little white dots or whatever you see if you're blind. You never see nothing. No thing, you know. No, we don't experience that. Okay. Okay. So it doesn't, so therefore, one is free to hold the early chapters of Genesis are not a historical account of creation, and we are free to accept evolution. I mean, there's so much proof, and people are still saying, "Oh, the ark and this thing and that thing and the apple," and there's no apple. Believe it or not, it's not mentioned. John, hi, John. Hi, Elena. Hi, Teresa. Hi, Mark. Did Mary have other children? No. Then why does he say? Okay, I'll tell you one thing real fast. Okay, let's just stop here and we'll take it tomorrow. No, she didn't have any kids. You know why they say she had kids? Because Jesus said, "My brothers." If you go to Africa right now and you ask some kid in Africa, how's your father doing? He will ask you which one. My father, who gave me my ritual right when I was a teenager, my father who blessed me in when I became a Christian, or my father who had me. They have three fathers, and they don't just say, and they all do that in a certain part of Africa. I know because my friend was a missionary. I live with him now, Father Ed. He was there 26 years. He's 90 years old now. He's going to be 90 this month. If you want to send him a card, send him one. Father Ed, care of. Okay. No. So when Jesus says, "Hey cousins," they will all do that. Of course, it's true. We can't lie that yes, in those days also when you said brother, it was his brother and all that. But it also could mean this. What I'm telling you now, in modern times we do it, and I'm sure they did it there, and we do that. Hey primo, and they're not even anything near primo. They're just friends. And we say, carnal, hey, fleshy, come over here, fleshy one. But it's not my carnal, he's not my brother, but we feel like brothers. The reason why she didn't have it, though, is because the Catholic Church was told, whatever you say on this planet is what I say in heaven that's true, that it's true. Whatever you say that's not true on this planet, in heaven I will hold it as not true. And what the Catholic Church says is that the Virgin Mary is virgin and mother. Now, that could be that she had a baby and all that. She could have had other babies and all that stuff, but the church says no. And that's why we believe that she didn't have any kids. Now, you can go another route too. St. Joseph could have had kids from a first marriage. Okay. And that solves that little problem. But yeah, it's just that that's what we believe. Okay. And see, if we didn't have the Pope is infallible, we would be in problems. I mean, I would have a problem. For instance, St. Thomas Aquinas said that the Immaculate Conception, the study of it was not really necessary. But now it's a dogma. Well, he didn't know at that time. But now it's a dogma. When the Pope gets together, not himself. And I hate it when people say, "Oh, the Pope is infallible. He never makes a mistake. That's stupid. You guys are stupid." No, he makes mistakes every day. 2 and 2 is 5. I buy this and they give me the wrong change. I don't know it. I don't know how to count, or I read something and I misinterpreted it. He does that every day. It's only 2 times that he used the power of infallibility. That means when he says something with the rest of his little group of popes or bishops or whatever bishops, then God holds it as true. Because otherwise, then I can say, "Well, you're wrong," and they go, "Well, you're wrong." Well, who knows where the truth is, where the truth lies, really, really lies. So God found a way. He said, "Whatever you say on this planet, I will hold it as true up there." And he's only used it twice in the last 3 centuries, so it's not like everyday thing. The Immaculate Conception in 1854, because I went to Our Lady of Lourdes Church and school, And in 1958, the Virgin Mary appeared to Bernadette in France, and she said, "I'm the Immaculate Conception." And they had declared it a dogma 4 years earlier in 1954. And then that a lady assumed into heaven in the 1900s, late 1900s. I mean, mid 1900s. Only twice, and they make the infallibility. He's only used it twice. Okay, I'm finished, I think. I went over time. Bye. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to keep you. Why do you think he created us? You know why he created us? Because of love. He loved so much he had to just share it. And then we screwed it up. And then God could have said, you know what, I love you, but I can't deal with this. I'm perfect. I'm happy with myself. But he didn't do it because he loved. Unconditional love. You don't have to go, I'm going to pray the Hail Mary. I'm going to do 100 novenas. I'm going to be good and all that. God saves, okay, not you. God saved you already. You're saved, yes. And Protestant ministers, I hate to use Protestant. Other ministers come to you and say, well, I'm saved. Are you saved? Do you know I'm saved? Well, yeah, but don't use that because you think that now I'm saved, so I can do whatever the heck I want. That doesn't work that way. And you are saved, but then St. Paul said it. He says, "Show me your works." You have faith, okay? I have faith. Yeah, but show me your works. Show me how you're cooperating with God's love. He loves you. Live like Jesus. Live like Jesus. And then, what if I don't love Jesus? God still loves you. And he's inspiring you. And the only thing God wants for each one of us, everybody, baptized or not, the only thing he wants is that hi, Lilia. Every time I see Lilia, I think of how mean I was to her once. And I ask for her forgiveness. Yes. She's a wonderful girl, and I was horrible. At the time, I was going through a lot of stuff. So I laid it into her, and it wasn't very nice. So forgive me. But back to this. Yeah, it's goodbye, Mark. And I have to go now because we can go on and on and on and on. Talk about the name for Jesus, wonderful counselor. Yes, I will. Tomorrow. Okay. We said a lot of things, and now I got to go. But remember one thing, God created us because he loves us. God is love. And it's so strong that at one point when we thought everything was lost, you think this pandemia or this pandemic is something else. Sin is worse because it caused all of this stuff that's going on. All evil came from just saying to God, I don't want to love you. God says, I don't care now. Whatever your motives were, I still love you. And the only thing I want from each one of you, whether you're a communist, an atheist, a hateful person, a loving person, is that one day you be with me forever, loving. Okay? That's amazing. Goodbye, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. More questions, please. Tomorrow. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay. Very slow and going away. Okay. Sorry.